Greetings, friends. So, with my capstone project, I was already kind of conceptualizing doing a written paper that would take a look at a historical figure from my local community and gave it some time even leading up to the start of the class. I opted to do a paper on uh, Dr. James Lombard. Dr. James Lombard was a early Yankee settler to central Wisconsin. He was a War of 1812 vet, and I consider myself a local historian in a sorts. And for me, I've worked on now for the last 4 or 5 years documenting War of 1812 veterans buried in Portage County, my home county, central Wisconsin area. And so for me, I wanted to at least start a historical narrative of James Lombard's life. And the that said, given the fact that he's a War of 1812 vet, and I've been working on developing, a list of War of 1812 vets buried in Portage County. I already had a good idea of who James was, but then kind of creating something that is a narrative of his life, as well as something that is more than just a conversational discussion, that's full of anecdotes and so forth, to be able to create something that was more academically sound with source material and so forth, for me, definitely was going to be a challenge. That said, James is not a well known figure, so from the standpoint, it's not like I'm researching, a founding father or some celebrity or something like that. So that was what I set out to do. I had the hopes of being able to, in our 7 week time frame, be able to put together a an overall project that would encompass James' life from his birth out east in what was the District of Maine. Uh, if you don't know the history of Maine, it was a district of Massachusetts before it became a state. So he was born in Maine and then eventually traveled and settled in Portage County, Wisconsin, with his children, and basically started a successful family. And so I wanted to be able to encompass all that into historical narrative. That said, didn't go according to plan. One of my biggest curses in my life is being a procrastinator, so I was constantly battling procrastination. And as well as I started a new job and simultaneously lost that job in the process of this particular class. Um, and then also had a health issue that's been chronic for most of my life pop up. And so, those two issues added a lot of stress to being able to work the timeline that I wanted. So that timeline pretty much completely went out the window. I had to shift from, making that life narrative of James Lombard to focusing on basically the time frame that he was out east in Maine. And that's okay. That's perfectly fine because, the one thing that I've learned with my research working on genealogy and local historical figures is that even when you finish a project, that project truthfully is never done because you're always going to run into the possibility of finding more source material to put into a prior project that you did and extend that. So, you know, having the shorter paper, I am very much already kind of looking at okay ways I can take that paper in the future and extend that paper. Um, and so, yeah, that said, since this was a local project for me here in central Wisconsin, I didn't really need to put together a budget. I mean, I could have been very technical and, you know, maintain a log of fuel and all that traveling from the local Lombard cemetery where James is buried and stuff like that. But it really, I mean, you know, if anything, it just would have been a very tiny budget that would have been needed to complete it. But at any rate, so I didn't keep a budget at all for this. This is more of a, I'm doing a capstone project that is actually part of my passion. So, for me to, get that in depth, keeping a budget and stuff like that, and working, and managing that kind of an aspect really just wouldn't have been anything that it would have taken what fun I did have in this and would have taken and thrown it out the window. The so that said, it's a shorter paper. I feel good about that because taking and working with fewer source materials and condensing into just a shorter length of a paper with the intention at a future date to build on that is um, it's fulfilling. That said, I worked with three main sources for the paper, and let's see, it was utilizing the Find a Grave website um, for Dr. James Lombard, his entry in there. That is a database that users add information to. I was able to then dig into that entry for James Lombard and located another source, which was, let's see here, I'm just looking it up here, the commemorative biographical record of Upper Wisconsin counties, and that was um, a record that was put together in 1895. So I was completely unaware of that particular source before I began. So that was a great find that kind of helped develop the paper, as well as then another one that I was aware of, which is the records of the Massachusetts volunteers for the War of 1812 through 1814. That particular piece, really truthfully solidifies, uh, the historical proof of his involvement in the War of 1812. He had a short enlistment that was only about a month long. I believe the enlistment was a hurried enlistment to defend the local area that he was in at the time, given that that was such a short enlistment time frame and it was in the year of 1814, so it was near the end of the war. So those were the three main sources that I used in the paper. And Yeah, so in the end, I was pleased with how this paper turned out. And if any of you would like to read it or whatnot, I'm not sure if this will be up for other people in the class to look at and that, but please just reach out to me. I'm happy to share it. Um, I'm aware that, being in a Utah university, there might be a lot of individuals who are interested in genealogy. So, yeah, if it's something that you might be interested in, please just reach out. And yeah, we'll go from there. But this class has been a pleasure, and I greatly enjoyed the non stressful parts of this class. It was nothing from wrong from the class standpoint. It's just, the stressful aspects were myself. So, yeah, I hope you all have a wonderful holiday coming up for Christmas, and maybe we'll talk more.